So it's the organic nature of it is open and welcoming to people who want to not just come in and stroll around, but who actually want to take on responsibility.
I still don't exactly know.
So, what do you think are some of the solutions to the problems that are created by Wall Street?
Mass mobilizing in one form or another, and this is one form of mass mobilizing. Others are maybe in a fashion that would get some of the unions and some of the larger organizations that can mobilize larger numbers of people involved, and of course pushing the corporations themselves. I love the grassroots actions in banks and in corporate headquarters. But ultimately, it comes down to a couple of things. One is making rules for the global economy that make corporations pay their fair share and can't get away with things like the massive tax havens that they have or cooking their books. And the other is that you need strong worker movements. And that's what's been so eroded in this country. And now it's even worse because there's a meme going around saying that it's unions' fault, it's workers' fault, it's these damn teachers, it's these pensions. And I think it's important to counter that it's the damn Wall Street traders, and it's these transactions that ought to be taxed, and it's the corporate $1 million salaries and bonuses that need to end, and that that has to be done through a coalition that includes the unions and non-union, pro-worker, poor people. Right now we're still dissected between the more mainstream progressives that wouldn't do anything like this, but would go to conferences and might come out for a one-day rally, and this more spontaneous, everybody's welcome, anybody who's pissed off about too much corporate power. So those two have to come together, or at least work in choreography. You know, you have an orchestra that plays different instruments and it sounds fantastic together. Here we've got to make those different instruments actually harmonize.
So what are some nuts and bolts things that people could do to actually start countering those incorrect memes and start letting people know what the truth is?
Support workers' movements, whether it's farm workers like the Immokalee workers who are farm workers trying to get a penny more for the tomatoes they pick, or whether it's supporting domestic workers that are trying to get paid a living wage and have decent work hours, or whether it's doing some kind of anti-corporate action with groups like the group Uncut that goes into banks and creates a kind of flash mob type scene, getting out the message of I pay my taxes, why don't you? There's more organized things to do, like through organizations that like Mine Global Exchange, where we actually buy a share in some of these corporations so we can go to their shareholder meetings and bring forward resolutions or do protests. I mean, at the Halliburton shareholder meetings, we would chain ourselves and throw blood around and say, you know, stop making money off of war. And then there's what's perhaps less appealing but necessary, which is pushing our congresspeople to enact laws that stop giving away the tax dollars to the corporations. So all of those things together have to be done. My goodness, look at this. funny because a group of firefighters, right,
Yeah, the firefighters.
just passed by, and everybody's applauding them. But it looks like they weren't here to show solidarity so much as they were walking through the park. But what was funny, that was funny. In Madison, it was a very conscious thing, where the firefighters came to be part of the protests. And as soon as the firefighters came in, everybody would erupt in, great applause. But not just the firefighters, it's when the teachers came. And even more incredible was when the high school students showed up. And it's that kind of alliance that we need to build. The other thing is, I'm almost 60 now, and this last decade has been very hard because I'm used to working in a diverse community where a lot of young people are involved. And in the last 10 years, it was hard to get young people involved in the anti-war movement, even in some of the other movements. And now I see that turning around. I saw at Madison, high school students kind of held down the whole camp out inside the Capitol. And here you see it led by young people, and that gives me a lot of hope. And of course, I saw it all around the Arab world. I was in Tahrir Square, and I was in Greece recently, and you see that whether it's the struggle in Syria or Bahrain or Egypt or Tunisia, or now in Spain or in Greece, it's young people who are doing it, and that's absolutely necessary.
What are some cues that this demonstration could take from the organizing in Tahrir Square?
Well, Tahrir Square was totally different because it was one message. Everybody came because they said get rid of Mubarak and Mubarak's regime, and it was cohesive, clear, and massive. It also faced terrible repression, and I thought once it faced the repression, people would stop coming. I mean, why would you allow your family to go down to a square where there were snipers on the building shooting down at you, and yet it was irrepressible? I mean, young people refused to listen to their parents who said, I'm not going, and they just came in by the masses. So here, the numbers are a lot smaller. The message is not very clear. I mean, you look around even at the signs, there's all kinds of things, which does give it a beauty, but it makes it harder for people to quite understand what it's about. And I think it's got, perhaps, even though I'm a hippie at heart, and I'm an old hippie from the 60s, it's got maybe a little tinge too much of a hippie atmosphere to it, because I think then that keeps other people like union folks from feeling like it's their space as well. So I think, the messaging could be tighter. There should be big banners up that have the messaging so that all the tourists and people going by would know what this is about. It took a while, I hear, for an information booth to be there. And since it's a generation that's so focused on social networking, Facebook and Twitter, that they're less sensitive about the need for good flyers, things to pass out, talking to the public. So I think there's wonderful things for us to learn as we make more of these happen around the country, and there's ways to improve on it. And we have another mobilization like this that will be starting in Washington on October 6th, and we're very excited to learn from the positive things and some of the things that could be improved.
The way in which people are trying to think inside out about issues. People are trying to think deeply and then participate in ways of kind of molding society according to what people's ideal visions are of the way that society should be. And one of the things that I observe is that there are a lot of different cultural differences in the way that people are communicating ideas. There are a lot of different generational differences. Given the difference that he was outlining here, is that there is, former generations there were, there's like a single issue that people would follow. This generation looks at things in a much more multi-dimensional way, I'd like to figure out ways of bridging that communication gap.